GE Aviation has had our supplier collaboration portal, ACES, in place since 2006. We are retiring ACES and moving to a new collaboration product called SupplyLine. SupplyLine will be the new tool for you to use to download GE purchase orders, get your firm and forecast demand, and create advanced ship notices when you ship. All these require fewer steps and are faster in SupplyLine. You may have noticed that I didn't mention commits. That's because we are moving away from asking you to provide a commit for each release we issue. Instead, we are asking you to provide your plans for having stock available to GE Aviation. SupplyLine gives you a way to do so using a straightforward template. If you'd like a fully automated option that requires no labor and better visibility into our requirements, then look to Robot Morning's Demand Line product. If you're like us, then you are always evolving your use of your ERP. Know that GE Aviation understands that the dates and quantities in your ERP may not be as accurate as you'd like. Go ahead and share them. We are teaching our staff how to collaborate with you, improving on its accuracy.
This is an exciting change. GE Aviation wants to be your customer of choice by providing a better portal experience focused on collaboration. We understand that GE Aviation owns our demand, you own your plan, and SupplyLine helps both of us align them where there are mismatches. Together, you and GE Aviation are leading the way to our industry's digital thread and Industry 4.0 goals. Thank you.
Before I share my screen, I just want to introduce you to SupplyLine. Some of you already know that Robot Morning creates different pieces of software that are used by both suppliers and customers. Because of this, I think you'll find that SupplyLine is built with you in mind. There are features here that you can put to good use. SupplyLine allows you to access your schedules and to see a history of changes to them. You can share your operational data, your plans with GE. You can create shipments. That's advanced shipment notifications. You can view and acknowledge POs, and you can also communicate with GE in a few different ways. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so here we have SupplyLine. You'll access SupplyLine through a web browser. You'll be given a URL, and then you'll just access it in a web browser. You'll log in with your GE SSO. You can be granted access to SupplyLine by any GE SupplyLine user. I'm going to show you everything that SupplyLine has to offer, with the exception of a few bits that the transportation department will cover after me. Even though you might be familiar with SupplyLine, I recommend that you stick with it. There are a lot of new features all the way throughout. I'm going to try to stick with a left to right basis. So I'm going to go from the left. I'm going to work my way to the right so that we don't skip around too much. So just to begin, here we are where you will land when you first log in. The very first thing you'll see is the screen with broadcast messages from GE. They're dated so you can see when they were placed. Across the top, the whole time you're logged into SupplyLine, you'll have these navigation buttons. They never leave. Your name will be here in the left-hand side. So right now we're logged in as a supplier user named Carla Davidson. And then over to the right-hand side, you'll see the last time the schedule was refreshed. Now, my demonstration system is not showing a very good information. Normally, the schedule is going to be refreshed regularly. So you're going to see a current timestamp there in a production environment. It'll always say today, and if it doesn't, you may want to question that. And then here in the middle is the supplier. So if you work with just one site, one supplier code, it will just automatically default your supplier here. But if you work with multiple supplier codes, you are able to put them into focus and work with that particular supplier in SupplyLine. And that's what we have here. Carla works with Blisk Fabricators and Montgomery Blue Metals. And so for a lot of different things in SupplyLine, we need to have the supplier in focus. So I'm going to choose Blisk Fabricators. And we're going to work with that particular supplier code today. And then we can take a look at the parts list. So you can see here over on the left is the parts button. You can click the button to toggle the list open and closed. It's a scrollable list with a row for each part. And it has a search bar at the top, so you can start typing a part number and it will limit the list down. For each part, you have these flags that give you a lot of information at a glance once you get to know what they mean. Until you get to know what they mean, you can hover over them to get information to find out what they mean. So this cardboard box means that this particular item has shippable records. This truck means that the item has shipments in transit. And then the flame here, it means the item has past due releases. You can see them at the top too. It has the same description for them. So at a glance, we can see that this is a critical part. It has some items that are in transit already, but there are more that are shippable. And then we can find out a few other things about them. And then across the top here, we have these filters that allow us to limit what we're looking at. So say we only want to see critical parts, we can choose show, and we can see only ones that are critical. And if we want to exclude any that already have shipments in transit, we could hide the truck, so we can limit the list down that way. I'm going to go ahead and remove these filters so we see all parts. You'll see another part over here that it describes the relationship between your parts and GE. I'm going to focus mostly on direct finished goods here, but you also have the ability to manage the indirect finished goods and the materials in similar ways. In fact, you have the ability to see the schedules and put in plans for these as well. And I'll point to those spots as we're working through. So I'm going to stick with all parts, which just happen to be mostly direct finished goods anyway. And let's go ahead and take a look at a part. So we can click on a part. I'm going to choose this part here. And this takes us to the part view, which gives us a lot of information about the part. Across the top bar, you have the supplier name and the code for that part, GE's item code for the part, GE's description. Over to the right, you have these flags again, which you can hover over just to get some quick information. You have your relevant quantities to GE, so what's currently shippable to GE and what is in transit. So what has shipments created against it. There are a total of 11 in transit shipments. And then over here to the right, you have your item code. So you have the ability to enter a few different things into SupplyLine to make your life a lot easier as you navigate it. One of those things is that you can put in your own item code. So if you use a different item code than GE, which a lot of you probably do, you can put it here just for cross-referencing so that you can look at it and see that this is your part number. I'll show you in a moment where you can put that and the other things that you can edit. The next section is advanced shipment notifications. These are shipments that are currently in transit. We'll get a lot more into advanced shipment notifications later, but this is where the in-transit ones appear for this part. The next piece down is the schedule. You can see that there are tabs. We are in the direct relationship tab. There is an indirect and a purchase from suppliers material tab, which shows the schedules. So you can use those as well if your parts do have that relationship with GE. There's a BMI tab, which will always be grayed out. GE does not currently use this functionality. So the very first thing at the top of the schedule is the lead time. So you're going to see the lead time for GE, and then you are also going to see the lead time for yourself. So you have the ability, again, to personalize and enter in your actual lead time so that GE can review that. You can see the difference here on this screen, but GE, your buyers, they also have the ability to run a report, which will provide them with that information. So it'll show them any discrepancies in lead time. You can see this is in weeks. So if you come into each of your parts, load in that lead time that you actually have for the parts, whether it's the same or not, go ahead and load it in just one time. And then that way you and your buyer both have eyes on what you both see as your weeks. And this could potentially start a conversation with the buyer if necessary. So it's important to go ahead and fill in that. So I'll show you where you can put that in a couple of places in a few minutes. So below that, we have the actual schedule. This is an LOB, or a line of balance. It's organized by date, and each row represents something having to do with the balance, affecting the balance. So the first row here you can see is a purchase order, gives us the relevant dates for the purchase order, the important quantities, and then what the balance is as of that date. So the negative balance you can see has a red background. That's what happens when you have a negative balance on this schedule. You can see when the balance becomes positive as of the 4th of December, that it actually, the red goes away. So you can see the second line is actually supplier stock. So this is a plan that has been entered by Blisk Fabricators. They have informed us that they have informed GE that they have stock of 27 pieces as of yesterday. Usually that would be as of the current date. And then the next lines are jobs, work in progress that the supplier, Carla, Blisk Manufacturers, has entered for this particular part. So you can see as each of these plans get entered, they're also affecting the balance. And as long as there is a plan to accommodate the demand, you don't have that red background or that negative balance. So that's your schedule for the individual part. Notice down in the right-hand corner that you have an export icon. If you hover over this, it tells you that you can export it into Excel or CSV. That is something you'll see in all tables throughout SupplyLine. So this advanced shipment notification table also has this icon. So you'll find that you are able to export information from many different places throughout SupplyLine into a spreadsheet. If you see this icon, you can export it. So over here on the right-hand side, we have a few different sections. I'm going to start at the top, purchase orders. This is going to give you some information about purchase orders for the part. You've got the PO in line, whether or not it's a long-term agreement, the end date for the purchase order, and how many are shippable. It's scrollable if it needs to be. And then we can go down to the next piece, notes. This is where you can place notes on the part. And also GE can place notes on the part. So they're part specific. These don't generate notifications to anyone. They are strictly on this part view. So when you come to view the part, pull it up, you can look at the notes for the part if you need to. Your buyer at GE could do the same. However, you both have the ability to limit who can see the note. So when you create a note, you come in here and click the plus button. You can mark whether or not you want it to be visible to the customer. So in SupplyLine, you can make notes that are visible only to your company as the supplier. We can make notes that only Blisk Fabricator users could log in and see. Or we can specify that it's visible to GE as well. So if you make a note and you want to remove it, you can select it and click minus. You can select it and click edit, and that'll allow you to edit the note. But you can see here who made the note and when, what the note was, and who it's visible to. So this is visible to the customer because Angela Barrett made it. You'll see in a little bit that Angela Barrett is actually the GE buyer in my demonstration system. So in this case, the buyer did come in and create a note for Carla Davidson. And of course, it's visible to the customer because Angela Barrett is the customer. This is one made by Blisk Fabricators by Carla, who we're logged in as. It's of course visible to the supplier. But here's one that Carla made that she made visible to the customer. So when Angela Barrett logs into SupplyLine as a GE buyer, she'll be able to see this note too. So those are your notes. Again, they are specific to the part and they are just on the part screen. So if you want to read notes, you come to the part screen and you can pull up the notes. The next piece is tasks. So tasks would be how you actually communicate with your buyer at GE. So the hope with this is that it can get you out of your emails, maybe help you make less phone calls. You can actually create these tasks which provide notifications to the opposite user when they have a task that has been created for them. So you might have noticed when we logged in today that we had a notification that we have one task that has been created for us. We'll take a look at that in a minute and address it. But we can see that for this part specifically, many tasks have been created. Who created them? So this was Angela Barrett, the buyer, whether or not they were completed and who completed them and when. And then, the same information. Here's one that Carla created for her buyer, and the buyer completed it. So we can scroll through these and see that if they don't have the green, they have not yet been done. So this is one that Carla's created that has not yet been completed by the buyer. And then here's another one that hasn't been completed, no green. The buyer created this one for Carla and it has not yet been completed. So that must be this. So let's go ahead and take a look at what you'll see when you log in to SupplyLine and click on the tasks button. So just like you, if your buyer logs into SupplyLine and you've created a task for them, they'll have this same notification up top. It'll say how many tasks have been created. So they'll be listed here if there are multiple. You'll see that over here, you've got 4 different buttons. The top one is highlighted green. These are tasks that you need to complete. We can select from those. If there were a list, we could just keep clicking through them and the information would appear on the right-hand side. You can see all of the important information, what Angela is asking us to do. So she's saying update the ASN tracking number. For whatever reason, there is not a tracking number on this part number. So what we would do is just click this button to view the part. This takes us right to the part view, just the same screen that we see back here. It's just in a new window, and we can do all the same things in it. And we can see that ASN number that she mentioned does not have a tracking number, so we can just go ahead and just put a tracking number in there and call that done, close it, and now we can tell her that we did it. So we can click complete, mark that we completed the task, and click OK. And it's no longer here in tasks that you need to complete. Your task notification disappears. So then we can go down to the next one, tasks you have completed, and you can see a list. This would be scrollable if it needed to be, of all of the tasks that Carla has completed, excuse me, and who created them. You can click through them to get the same information on the right. You have the ability to view the part, and you can just look at what tasks have been completed. And then here, these are incomplete tasks that you have requested. So this is what Carla has asked of GE or of her buyer that has not yet been taken care of. So she could come here, click to view the part, but it's just out there waiting. This is what's going to cause Angela Barrett to have a notification when she logs in. The last one, completed tasks that you have requested. So this was one that Angela did have a notification for, came in and handled. And now we can look at it as the supplier and see that Angela took care of it on the 18th. So those are tasks. So you can create them on the part itself, but then when you go to manage them, you would manage them through the tasks button when you get the notifications. All right, so that's what I wanted to show you mostly in the part view. I next want to go ahead and talk about advanced shipment notifications. When you're ready to create an ASN, let's go ahead and go back to the part view. Carla does need to select which supplier she's working with, so we'll select Blisk. We'll click the parts list, and then we'll choose a part to create an ASN. This one has the cardboard box, so it has shippable releases. Now we're looking at the part view. First of all, the quality release authorization. That is something that is required to be created in order to create an ASN. So to create an ASN, a DSQR must have first created your quality release authorization. So I'm going to show you first how that DSQR will create the quality release, and then we can talk about how you create the ASN once that's been created. So we have here the advanced shipment notification window, the in-transit ASNs like we talked about before, and then here this icon that looks like a little suitcase is the button to create a quality release authorization. Okay, so we have the create quality release authorization form. The DSQR will come in and create the QRA, or the quality release authorization, by filling in these fields. First of all, the item code is already populated. The item revision must be entered. You'll need to select whether or not, or the DSQR will need to select whether it's complete to a drawing NPO. If a batch lot heat or serial number is required, that will need to be entered. And then we just click Save. When we click Save, it gives the ability to go ahead and print out, to view or print out that quality release authorization. I'm going to go ahead and open it in the browser. And we see here what the quality release authorization looks like. The DSQR should print this form. They should sign it. And then what they'll do is include it with the parts on the rest of their journey through your process. So when you create the ASN, you'll need to reference this document, and I'll show you that. So this is the quality release document. You'll have that when you're ready to create your shipment. You'll come to the part view. And now here we are in the advanced shipment notification. And to create an ASN, we just want to click the plus button. And this takes us into the Create ASN window. So first of all, you'll need to start at the top, select the PO and line that you're shipping on. That will populate a lot of fields for you. The location that you're shipping, so the dock is already selected for me. If there's a list of those, you'll just want to make sure to have the correct dock selected. You have the shipping group to choose. Now, the shipping group is a collection of releases that you can ship to which meet certain requirements. I know that in ACES you have the auth and requester codes. Shipping group is what replaces that. It is going to default to the most current, and that's what you'll want to use unless you've been instructed to use a different shipping group. In my case, I only have one shipping group, so it's very easy. It'll tell you the quantity that's shippable on the PO that's selected. We have 88, so we're going to go ahead and ship 2 pieces. You see when you put this in, it fills out this table below to show how this ASN is going to apply to the releases on the selected PO. You'll want to enter a packing list. Again, like with the DSQR created form for the quality release authorization, if a batch lot or heat or a serial number is required, you'll enter that. The country of origin will automatically populate. It comes from the PO, and so it should be accurate. If you see a country that is not correct for the country of origin here, I don't recommend that you change this. In fact, you'll want to contact GE instead because the PO should be accurate. I understand that when the ASN comes in, if the wrong country is here, the country not matching the purchase order, then the ASN may be rejected. So instead of just changing the country, if it's wrong, reach out to someone at GE and get that purchase order fixed before you create the ASN. The next piece is the item unit weight. The item unit weight is another one of those things that you can enter on your own into SupplyLine, and it's saved. So you can go through each part, put in the item unit weight one time, and then from that point forward, whenever you create ASNs, it's going to be stored here. So you do have the ability to change it here on this screen if you need to, but it is saved somewhere else. So that's going to populate for you if you got it saved. The next piece is the quality release authorization number. You'll want to select the number that matches the document that was created by the DSQR and included with the parts that are shipping. So you'll go ahead and select that. And then the carrier shipment. What I'm going to show you is only one drop-down option. What you'll see later from the shipping department, there are a few other options that you can select, and it'll go into greater detail. What I can tell you here is that the option you select will give you information below about what that option means. So this just tells us what I have already created a carrier shipment means. Very simply, the carrier is selected over here, and then you can enter the tracking number. With the packages, you want to enter the unit of measure. So you can choose how you're going to measure the package. You want to choose inch, centimeter, millimeter. You can enter the weight unit of measure, and then you're going to need to enter the wood content. If it is a pallet or a crate, for example, you'll have to say if it's treated or untreated. I'm going to use cardboard boxes, so we'll say none. And so you click a plus button. You'll want to create a line for every package. I have 2 items, shipping 2 items at 2 pounds a piece, but I'm going to use 2 boxes. So I'm going to make these boxes perfectly square, 12 by 12 by 12. Packed weight, we know that it weighs 2 pounds. I'm going to ship 1. Now I could click the plus button to create another row to describe the same exact package, or I could select a row and click minus to delete it if I've entered something incorrectly. But I can also just select this row and duplicate it with the duplicate button. So my packages are exactly the same. I now have a duplicate row. It's perfect. If this were just a couple of inches different, I could change it if I needed to. It's all editable, but you can duplicate the row. All right, I'm glad I remembered to put in my packages, or else I would have received a reminder on screen to tell me to do that. So no worries, if you forget, it will tell you. Okay, so when I'm ready to create the ASN, I'll click the Create ASN button. It tells us up here on the right that the shipment was created. It appears in the shipments in transit, so this is the one that we just now created. And if we want to print it, we can actually just go ahead and print it right now by double-clicking the row. So I'm going to open this in Firefox. You can view it, save it, print it. Now, when you look at this later in a production environment, this label is going to look like a GE compliant label, but right now I just have a demonstration label. But as you can see, you can pull that up. Now you can print out one ASN or you can print out many. If you wanted to print them all out at once, you could open up the part view, create the ASN, open up the part view for a different part, create an ASN there, create as many ASNs as you want to, just don't double click them. And then what you can do is go to this unprinted ASNs button. And for any ASNs that you have not yet double clicked to print, they'll all be listed here and you can print them all at once. So it's up to you. You can print them as you create them or just wait until the end and use the unprinted ASN button to print them all at once. Couple of other things on this ASN screen. First of all, we talked about that you can edit the tracking number. That's the only thing that you can edit on an ASN that you've created. If you have anything else that's incorrect on an ASN, you'll want to select the row and click the minus sign. That'll remove the ASN and you can start over, create a new one. The other piece is this little clock icon over here. This allows you to view ASN history. So this will be scrollable if there are many ASNs. It'll show you ASNs no matter what the status, received, canceled, shipped. Canceled would be if you selected it and clicked the minus sign. So no matter what the status, it's all listed here. This is a table in SupplyLine, so it has that export icon if you need to export this. Also, it has headers across the top. With these tables, you can sort by header just by clicking the header by any one of them. So that's your ASN history for the part. Go back to my supplier. I mentioned how you can see the schedule for just the individual part, but you can actually download the schedule in its entirety for all of your parts. So we've got this third button up in the navigation bar, the File Exchange button. Over on the left-hand side of this screen is your Download Center. You'll be able to choose what you want to download. So we're using the drop-down to select Schedule. You can choose the file format, Excel or CSV. I'm looking at Excel, and then you can just download that schedule. So let's open it up and take a look. And here's your schedule for all parts, and the PO number, planned, all of the information. Julie, I think you have some information to give about the schedule as well.
Yes, thank you, Amy. All right, so as you probably have noticed in the version of SupplyLine you already have, this is what the schedule looks like, with one exception. So let me just walk you through this. As you probably have learned, your transaction date is your MRD date. The shippable date is the date of MRD minus your transit time. So if your transit time is 5 days, you're going to notice the shippable date is exactly 5 days before that MRD or transaction date. We've added supplier code because we know many of you manage schedules and manage part production for multiple sites at your company, so that you can distinguish which parts are being produced at which sites. We also included the supplier item code so that this can reflect if you have different part numbers or part naming conventions than the GE part number, you'll see that reflected as well. The shipping group that Amy described earlier is also contained here. So in the event that your delivery manager at GE indicates they want you to ship to a particular group, you'll recognize this as you've seen the communication we've had about it. Previously, we would refer to a requester code or an authorization code. We're actually moving to a shipping group. So if your delivery manager needs you to ship out of MRD order, they are going to point to a particular shipping group to ship to. The is critical, is rescue will continue to say no until GE determines how we want to populate those columns. Is delinquent is simply, are you late to MRD? DPAS rating will be populated where applicable. The project column is going to contain your contract code and contract remark. You should already see that. And then the one exception to what you're seeing currently is that purpose column will be populated with the words either spares or assembly, because we recognize that in our E12 remark, which gives you specific packaging instructions for spares versus assembly, there are different ways that those parts need to be shipped or need to be packaged. So we are letting you know on the schedule whether that particular line item is for spares or is for assembly. So not populated today, but it is coming. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Go ahead and close schedule. Okay, so that's your schedule. Again, if you want to look at the schedule for just the part, go into the part view. If you want to download the entire schedule, use the file exchange button and select schedule here in the download side. So what I'd like to talk to you now about is submitting your plans or sharing operational data with GE. Unlike portals you may use for other customers, SupplyLine doesn't require you to update your plans when GE changes their demand. You only need to update SupplyLine when your own plans change. So I'm going to take you through and I'm going to show you actually 3 different ways that you can update your plans or your operational data with SupplyLine or GE. I'm going to start at the most manual and work my way to the most automated or to fully automated. So starting with the most manual, it's something that you would want to consider if you have maybe 10 or fewer parts. If you have more parts than that, you may want to look at one of the more automated options. It is the very most simple way to do it if you want to just go with the parts button. So we're going to go back to the parts button. We're going to go back to the same part we've been working with. And down here on the bottom left-hand side, the one thing I didn't cover on this screen is this little pencil icon. So let's take a look at that. So this opens up a view that, first of all, at the very top has those things that I told you about earlier, the different things that you can edit on your own so that they are visible in SupplyLine, your own item code for cross-referencing on that schedule and on the part view, your lead time in weeks so that you and GE can make sure that you're on the same page, and then your unit weight for the part so that when you create ASNs, you don't have to come in and put in the weight every single time. It's just defaulted in here for you. So once you save it on this screen, it's saved in SupplyLine. You can edit it if you need to, but you don't ever have to unless you need to. So those are your pieces. Those can always be taken care of in the pencil on that part view screen. But down below is where you would enter your plans. And again, this is if you have 10 or fewer parts, here's where you do it. Here in this pencil icon on this view, you can enter your current stock. So right now we have 25 entered as current stock. We could go ahead and enter 33. What this means is how many we have today that are available. So 33 stock. And then we have all of the work orders that we saw on that schedule already listed here. You can see that one of them doesn't even have a work order number. It tells you at the top that that's optional. However, I recommend it because if it's not there, it doesn't show up. The work order number doesn't show up in the schedule for the part. And it's just not as easy to read. I'll show you that again when we go back and take a look at it. If you need to edit any of your job information, you can click into the fields to edit them. You can select one and remove it, and then you can click plus to create a new one. So we'll just enter in a new job here. Oops. We'll say this is for 3 pieces. And then down here in the bottom, you can enter your production. So just like how you would enter your work orders, you can add and remove any of the production. That would be your expected completion date and quantity. It's just the same way. I'm going to skip over that for now and just save this. So remember, we made this work order with 4s for a quantity of 3, and we changed the current stock to 33. So what we can see is as of today, 11/28, at the supplier 33, supplier stock, so that has been updated. Didn't quite get the balance into a positive state, however, the next line does. And then we can see here that that job that we entered with the 4s and the quantity 3, and we can see how that affected that running balance. And also, just while we're here, you can see this one job that doesn't have a job number and how it gives us a lot less information on this screen. So that's why I recommend that you enter the job number. When you're entering your plans, just come to each one of these part screens, click the pencil button, and enter in your stock and your WIP and your planned production and save it, and it'll show up in this screen, and you're good to go. That's the most manual way of doing it. The next way, this would be if you have more than 10 parts, or if you just find it easier. If you have 2 parts and you want to go this way, you can. We'll go back to this file exchange button, and back here on the left-hand side, the download center. This time we're choosing operational data template, which is already selected for us, and we'll go ahead and download it. I'm going to open it up. And you can see the operational data template opens up with many tabs. The first 2 are for direct finished goods, which is what we've been working with through this training. We talked about how your parts can have different relationships to GE. You also have the ability to enter in plans for indirect finished goods and materials. So you do have the ability to enter those, and the tabs are pretty similar all the way across. Starting with the first one, you'll have the name of the tab, what it does on line 5, and then on 7, it suggests an ERP source to get the information needed to fill in this spreadsheet. This will tell you a common name in your ERP, in any ERP for this type of information. In this case, it would be the inventory finished goods status report or something named like that. And then in the rows below, you have descriptions of each of the columns, and it tells you what it means and whether it is optional. So this finished good item code, what it means, that's this header. Supplier item code, you can see it's optional. That's this one here. So it tells you the description of each one. And you can see what it's done is it's pulled from SupplyLine all of the item codes that are in the list, and all of the information that's already loaded up into SupplyLine as far as quantity on hand and lead time. So we can see this part that we've been working with all along has that quantity on hand of 33 that we just put in. Let's go ahead and change that to 44 so we can notice it when we go back. And the lead time of 12 that has been there, let's go ahead and change that to 14. And so you would do this for every one of your parts. Just go through, enter the lead time, go through and enter your quantity on hand. And then we'll go to the next tab, the direct finished goods work orders. So this one's very similar setup, description of the tab, information about the tab, and the suggested ERP source. And then you have the rows that describe the columns on row 17 here. So the finished good item code, supplier item code, and so on. And what it's done is it's pulled all of the work orders that I already have entered into my system. So you can see I've only got plans entered for that one part that I've been working for. But if I had plans entered for all the other parts, they would load up into this as well. So on the screen, I could edit any of these if I need to. But if they're all good, then we will just go ahead and add another job. Can enter a quantity. Let's go ahead and make this job for 55. And in here, as this row says, it's optional, but we would type WIP or planned if we have that. I give it a job number already, so I'm going to say that this is WIP. And I'm just going to save the sheet. So I saved it. I'm going to go ahead and close it. And then over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to use the upload center. So you choose the file type that you're uploading. Operational data template is already selected. In fact, that's the only thing you can upload at this time, so it's very easy. The reset operational data for all parts checkbox. This you'll want to select almost every time. There are very few circumstances where you wouldn't be resetting your operational data for all parts. It all downloaded into the spreadsheet after all, and you only have to edit and make changes and add things to that spreadsheet. So most of the time you will click this checkbox, reset operational data for all parts, and then click browse to select the one that you want to upload. You can click clear if you selected the wrong thing. I'm going to go ahead and click upload and hope that I filled in everything all right. It'll give me a preview, just tell me everything that it's seeing and ask me, am I sure? So I'm going to click yes. Sometimes it takes a moment, depends on how much you're uploading. And then it'll tell you if the upload was successful. So it tells me here that it was successful. If there was a problem, it's very good about pointing to where the problem is. So it may tell you the exact cell on the exact sheet where the problem is, or it may give you some other descriptor. But most of the time it's going to point exactly where the problem is. You can go to the spreadsheet, make a correction, and then go ahead, save it, and re-upload it. You might hit another error, but it'll again point to where the problem is. Go find that on your spreadsheet, correct the issue. You're going to become really good at filling in that spreadsheet. You won't see very many issues, but SupplyLine is very good at telling you where they are. And as long as you correct any that it finds and continue to upload, you'll eventually get where it's submitted. And then the next time you'll know not to do those things again. So you'll be able to upload all of your data, just like I did, through this little upload area. And now we can actually go back to the parts, and everything that we uploaded right now is already in SupplyLine. So we changed the lead time weeks to 14. We changed our stock to 44. We created a job here with all the 5s for 55 pieces. It's already there. So it's just like if we had come in and clicked the pencil. You can see now that that job that we entered with the spreadsheet is listed there. All the information is there. So the pencil or the file exchange icon using the spreadsheet, the download and the upload, both are ways to do this in SupplyLine. The third way is the fully automated option, which is Demand Line Client. That's a piece of software that Robot Morning creates that automates most of the work that you do in various customer portals. So the submitting of plans, the creating of shipments, retrieving new schedules, all of that is automated. It would eliminate the need to come into SupplyLine and do this work that I'm telling you about today. Demand Line also performs analytics on all of the data that it pulls from the customer portals, and it also updates your ERP. So you don't even have to update your ERP with changes. It's all done automatically. So Demand Line, excuse me, that's the way to go, fully automated. If you have questions about Demand Line, I'm in the settings button now. There is a link here to Demand Line client information. It's the Robot Morning website. So you can actually click this purple link to get out there to the Robot Morning website to read about Demand Line client, watch videos about Demand Line client. But that is the most automated option. But if you want to stick with just SupplyLine, you'll either go into the part view, click the pencil to update your plan, or use the file exchange button. So speaking of Demand Line Client, we're coming into the settings button. The very first thing there is the RPC key. You'll only need this if you have Demand Line Client. So anybody on the phone today that has Demand Line Client, this is where you'll come to get your RPC key so that your Demand Line Client can communicate with GE's SupplyLine. You'll get this key one time, put it into your Demand Line Client configuration, and the two systems will just start talking to one another. If you do not have Demand Line Client, you still can use this settings screen to format your shipment labels. So you can choose the format and the paper size that you're using, and click Save if you make any changes. And that's what the settings is for. The Tools button is the next, so we'll click on that. The only option in Tools is Aged in Transit, and this will actually show you all ASNs that are in transit right now. So among any parts. So this is any that have a ship status or approval pending status, apparently. But any ASNs that have been created and aren't canceled, aren't received, they're all going to appear here. So this is an informational view. You can't make any changes to anything here. You can sort by clicking the headers, just like any table in SupplyLine, and you can export the list if you need to. So again, this is where you'll come to look at any that are in transit, no matter which part. The next button is tasks, which we've gone over. So I want to show you now the history button. Okay, so the history is going to show you any changes that have been made to PO releases. I highly recommend looking at this on a regular basis, either from day to day or week to week. You have the ability to look between any two spans of time, however, so you could look at it from month to month if you want, but it's to your benefit to see the changes as often as possible. If you had demand line, it gives you the ability to do this already with a few more extra things, but in SupplyLine, you do have the ability to look at it as well. Every time a new schedule is loaded into SupplyLine, a new snapshot is taken. So you see these little time date stamps. These are snapshots of the schedule when it was loaded in. So if there were two schedules loaded into SupplyLine on one day, you could look at the difference between those two schedules on one day. Might not see many changes, but you could do that. You could look from yesterday until today, and that's really what I would recommend that you do. Come in and pull up your order book in one window, pull this up in another, and look at the differences between yesterday and today's schedules, and that way you can go through and update your order book as you do that. So I'm going to actually, just so in the interest of getting lots of data in this window, I'm going to go as far back as I can in my demonstration system and then run it up until the most recent schedule in my demonstration system and click submit. What it'll do is list all of the POs on the left-hand side that have had changes between those two dates. You can search here if you need to. I'm going to select this bottom PO. When you select through these POs, it'll list you here any lines that have had changes, and then you can select through the lines to see those changes. And then over here on the right-hand side, you've got the PO line, release, and item code info. And then across here, you've got the before. So this blue section is the before, what is as of 5/31/2021, and the after, what it looked like, what everything looked like as of the 15th when the last schedule was pulled. So you can just look at a glance and see what the differences are. These here with nothing in the before section, what that means is just the schedule didn't exist in May, which would be, fairly normal if you're looking pretty far back, but the schedule didn't exist at all in May, and it did, and it was in fact closed by mid-November. We look at this one here. You can see that it was open. There's 150 on order. This was the due date, the status. It wasn't closed in May, but if we look over to this side, everything is the same except for the fact that it has been closed since. So that's the difference between the two. So you may see differences in quantities, differences in dates. Those are probably the things you want to watch out for the most. But yes, I would recommend that you regularly view this so that you can pick up any changes that have occurred to the schedule. So that's your history. It's a really handy feature. Then we next have the PO rev. So this is your purchase orders and acknowledgements. So when we come here, first of all, it's going to, by default, list all unacknowledged purchase orders here. I only have one, but they would be listed stacked, and then you could just click through them or scroll through them if there were a lot. You can select the PO to have a look at it. You can see it fills in everything over here on the right-hand side. It's got a yellow bar and an acknowledge button, which means that it has not yet been acknowledged. Gives you the ability to download it, which we'll do, but let's take a look at the screen first. You have your PO header information. You have the amendments and the ability to look at previous revisions. So we can look at the first one. You can see the top bar goes gray. This revision was superseded by a newer revision, so you don't have any confusion. And if we go back to the current, you've got that yellow bar. So if it has not been acknowledged, it's going to be yellow. If it has been acknowledged, it'll be green. I'll show you that in a minute. But if it's an old rev, it's gray. So even if it's old, let's check that out. You do have the ability to download it. the newest revision, you have the ability to acknowledge. You have all of the line information down here. You see these little triangles. These are disclosure triangles, so you can open up the line to get the remarks and more details. And then over to the right-hand side, you have the remarks, the ability to search through those, the regulatory values here. And so let's go ahead and download one. So we'll go ahead and download this and view it in the browser. And you'll see here that it goes ahead and downloads a very nice purchase order for you that you can print or save. And then you also have the ability to acknowledge. So when you're ready to acknowledge a purchase order, keep in mind that buyers and SFLs cannot acknowledge POs on behalf of suppliers. This can only be done by supplier users in SupplyLine. So you'll come in and you'll click acknowledge when you're ready. It will just give you a little reminder, ask you if you're sure, and you'll click acknowledge to say that you do want to acknowledge the purchase order. I'm not going to click this, but I'm going to show you what it looks like when you do, because I like having this one that's not acknowledged. We can use this drop down here to search by PO, and it will give us the ability to enter a PNO number, or we can just click search, and it's going to list to us every single PO in the system. And I can look at one that has already been acknowledged, so I'll go ahead and click on that. See, when it's acknowledged, it is green across the top. It tells us who acknowledged it, so this would actually say Carla Davidson has acknowledged it if it had been her, and then it'll tell you when it was acknowledged. So that's your acknowledgements, your POs. The next piece is the unit loads. This has to do with shipping. Tyler in transportation is going to talk more about that. And then the last piece for me is the help button. So the help button has a few different things that can help you navigate through SupplyLine. The first thing is training videos. There are a couple of training videos there. As Julie said, recordings have been made of the full entire training session, but there are some individual training videos here. We also have the user documentation. So if you click on that, you'll have the ability to view user documentation. If you click on it there, it'll open it up for you in a nice window, and you can go through and find out more about SupplyLine. This is very helpful if you forget anything that I said. It gives you more information that I've given you today. So always remember that documentation is there for you. You can search through it. Just use your Control F or Command F if you're a Mac user like me. Next is a new support ticket. If you want to open a ticket with Robot Morning, that would be if you have questions or problems or inquiries about SupplyLine. If you have specific questions about your data or that you would normally talk to your GE buyer about, you would reach out to them via tasks in SupplyLine under the part or with your normal methods. But if you want to speak with someone about SupplyLine specifically, you would click to open a new support ticket. And then the last piece is the version history. So every time there's an update to SupplyLine, you're going to get information about that in the version history. So you can actually come here and see what updates have been made to SupplyLine in a production environment.
My name is Tyler Franklin. I'm part of the GE Aviation traffic team. You may have worked with the likes of Paul McQuiston, Luis Felipe Alves, Scott Wallace, Scott Burney, Mike Gafarian, any of those guys. We're all on the same team here. And what I'm going to do today is walk you through how SupplyLine is going to interact with shipping. So many times Amy said that I will be following up with you on some points, and that's what we're going to go through here today. So on the ASN Create screen, there are going to be 3 drop downs. We're going to go through the first drop down option. If you were part of UAT, you saw this option, and this is the option that was on the screen as Amy showed you this, but it's effectively SupplyLine is not shipping the material. This is going to be very similar to the way ACES works today, where you're shipping the material outside of SupplyLine. You would have to go to a carrier portal, say like FedEx, and input information in the system. during SupplyLine, when we're up and running in SupplyLine and you're creating your ASNs in SupplyLine, there's going to be two reasons that you will use this option. Either you, the supplier, are paying for transportation. So if our terms on the PO state that you pay for transportation, then you would use this option. Or if you have been instructed by the traffic team, there's 2 distribution lists there. I named some of the folks that you may be familiar with by name. If you've been instructed by us to use this option, and we would give you more detailed instructions. So what this looks like in the system, it's the I have already created the carrier shipment. So you have already gone to FedEx and input the ship from, ship to address. You're either using your account number to pay for the transaction, or we're giving you an account number to use, something along those lines. You would have to come in and select the carrier. So, there's going to be a drop down. You would select FedEx, or DHL, or whomever it is, or if it's your carrier, whichever it is, there is going to be an other option for you. And then input the tracking number. Okay, that should be very familiar with you for the way the process works today. Now we're going to talk about the new options, though. Okay, this is where it be a little bit more unfamiliar to you. So if we're going to use SupplyLine to ship the material, what is going to happen is the weight and dimensions that you have input in the screen will be used to route the freight. There's something like close to 300,000 rules in the back end from all of our different suppliers, all of our different dock codes for all the different weight breaks that are going to determine who the appropriate carrier is. And if that rule is found, if a rule exists, it's going to return the tracking label, the bill of lading, commercial invoice, the ASN label, all of that at once. If a rule does not exist for any reason, then there will be an error message that is raised on the screen. What I do ask is that you confirm the pieces and weights, right? That's if somebody input too many zeros or got something off in one of those fields, it may cause a failure. So just check that first. Make sure you don't have too many zeros. Fix anything that you need to fix. Try it again. If that doesn't work, reach out to SupplyLineRouting@ge.com. We'll help to root cause it and potentially route it ourselves, or give you details of how to correct it on your side. But what this looks like on the screen is carrier shipment, allow SupplyLine to create. Okay, and every single time in SupplyLine, it does have the helpful text on the screen that lets you know what that option does. But this is SupplyLine will contact a carrier and will create a carrier shipment at the same time that it creates the ASN label. GE Aviation pays for the shipment. SupplyLine will provide you with the carrier label when you print the ASN. Basically a summary of what I just told you, right? So what happens, you select allow SupplyLine to create, and if you see over here, the carrier, you do not get to select a carrier and you do not have to input a tracking number. What you're going to do is click Create ASN. When you click Create ASN, you'll be returned to a screen where you'll get all the documents. This is where you'll get the ASN, the carrier label, like a FedEx label, bill of ladings, commercial invoice, everything. It'll all be right there for you. The only variation to this is if you're provided a premium transportation authorization or a PTA number, you would need to input that PTA number verbatim in this field here. So you click GE Aviation gave me a PTA code. This opens up this window. Input the PTA number here. What is going to happen is that is going to modify the rules. It's not only going to now use the pieces and weights, but it's going to use the pieces, weights, and that PTA number to then pull back a different rule. So what that would mean is if you typically ship FedEx ground, if that's how you ship, because you always ship really light material in boxes and you're within the USA, if you're provided a PTA code, you would input that verbatim, and you might get a FedEx Express like priority overnight label as opposed to a FedEx ground label. Okay, this PTA code, it will vary, it will change by supplier, it will change by week, so they're not evergreen. If you're given one, it's you should be working with buyers and GE fulfillment and everyone. They've given you that information, and you should know that you're being asked to expedite this material, because you're not only expediting it and shipping, you're probably also expediting it in your manufacturing process. So this is where that PTA code goes, and again, you would input that, click create ASN, and it will give you the same labels. So now there's one other scenario. Let's say you're going through and your process, you ship multiple items to maybe perhaps GE Aviation Erlanger, which is our Kentucky address, or perhaps the CPLC, Crescent Park Logistics Center, or sometimes referred to as SDC. This is our 9819 Westchester, Ohio address. If you ship a lot of material to the same location, it does not make sense to create a FedEx label for each package. Okay, it would be better, cheaper for GE Aviation if you do consolidate that material. It's also in the standard remarks that we ask you to do that. Failure to do so, we don't like to pay extra money, so we ask that you do not do that, that you do consolidate where it is practical. So if you had an example here, say you had 3 small boxes, all 10 inches by 10 inches by 10 inches, call it 5-10 pounds, something like that, and you put those onto a skid, right? In your skid, you had more than 50 pounds, you shrunk wrap those to a skid, you would be able to come in and put do not create yet. ASN will go on unit load. So you're going to consolidate this ASN, which is, in this example, this might be one of those 10 by 10 by 10 boxes. And you're going to then, or, your typical process, you have more than one shipment a day going to the same location. You're going to consolidate those other shipments that you're going to package up later in the day. So you click do not create yet, ASN will go on unit load, create ASN. What is going to happen, you will get the ASN label, but you will not get the shipping labels. The ASN that we just created from that screen will be put into this holding area, the unit load screen. This is going to be like an end of day process. So you'll have all your ASN boxes with your ASN labels, maybe on the dock or wherever. You put those onto a skid, or you're overpacking them, whatever it is, however you're consolidating those. You will see the different ASNs on this unit load screen, and you will see the ship to dock code. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that are going to 1A. If you select one of these that is going to 1A, it is going to down select that ASN based upon dock codes, and it will give you the other ASNs that are also going to that dock code. So you'll select one of them. It will filter the list to the other similar dock codes. You would then select those other items that you're consolidating. You input your final package weight and dimension. So, if you have those 3 smaller boxes, you're putting them onto a skid. Input the skid weight and dimensions, click ship, and you will then get those carrier labels to go with those ASN labels. Okay, so those are the 3 different examples of how you ship in SupplyLine. Again, the example of something is very much like it is in ACES today, and you're going to carrier websites separately, or You're going to use SupplyLine to ship the shipments, and you only have one box that you ship throughout the day to one dock code, and you use that, or you use the consolidation screen, the unit load screen. Okay, now I'm going to go through the different labels that are going to be provided by SupplyLine and where those go on the packages. This slide and the next slide would be very beneficial for you to give to your shipping personnel out on the shipping dock. It would be a good example for them to see so that they know the best way to put all of these labels on the packages. So we're going to start with the domestic. So both of these examples are going to be domestic. We have single outermost container, so you have one package. Okay, that's all you have. You're going to have your FedEx label or your carrier label. You're going to have your ASN barcode label, and this is going to be the box 1 of 1. You're also going to, in the sleeve, we ask that you put the master copy, and historically this would be the barcode label that the DSQR would sign. In this example, you're also going to have this GT260, which I believe Julie and Amy alluded to. This is the new DSQR form. This form would go with this label in the pouch. Okay, the E12 is being revised. It will have new language regarding this, and you'll see all that communication separately. So I won't get too much into this process right now. This is still going through some internal process before it's all finalized, but that's a hint what it's going to look like, where the information is going to go. Okay, again, for your domestic, say you have multiple outermost containers, so now you've done some sort of consolidation, or maybe you have one of those scenarios where, you know, one part goes in multiple boxes or something along those lines, so you actually have one ASN. Here, you would have your master carrier label. In this example, it's a FedEx label. You would have your box 1 of label, and again, your master barcode label and your GT260 form, so no different than your first box up here. But all the additional boxes, you're going to put the 2 of however many and so on, you know, if there's a 3rd of, etc. These are your additional boxes. You do not need to put the GT260 or the master barcode label on these additional boxes. So those would be missing from these additional boxes. On the international side, same sort of concept. All we've done now is we've added commercial invoices. Okay, so your single outermost container, we have a separate sleeve for your commercial invoices. The reason why we're asking you to do this is this helps to ensure that nobody from customs takes this type of paperwork. And if customs accidentally takes this paperwork, your material goes on problem line. It does not get received. It holds up the process. So it's in your best interest to keep these documents separate in 2 different sleeves. But again, from our first example, this is the domestic again. See, all we've done is we've added that commercial invoice package. You're going to put your commercial invoice that prints out. This will print out through SupplyLine. And if it's FedEx, you get 3 additional airway bill copies. They all say to place in pouch. These copies go in this pouch as well, because FedEx kind of views these as the commercial invoice. Okay, so all these commercial invoice documents go in this, and if you want to label it commercial invoice, if that's even better, I'm not asking you to, but if you want to, it helps the process along. If you have multiple outermost containers, again, not too much different. The only difference here from our domestic example here is we do ask you put the commercial invoices on the additional boxes. So every single box, when you're shipping international, should have commercial invoices on the outside. The reason for that, if a box is separated in transit from the master box, customs doesn't really care. They're looking for commercial invoices. That helps to get everything cleared through the process. Okay, a couple important points that we need to talk about how this is going to work. If you remember me talking about the 300,000 different combination for the rules and the route guide, those are all set up based upon the addresses that exist in the system today. We have 2 addresses. Every single shipment is shipping from one address to another address. Your shipper supplier address, the manufacturing address that was used however long ago it was that you started doing business with GE Aviation, that is the address on record. If you move, if you have multiple manufacturing facilities all under one supplier code, anything, there's multiple different scenarios for how something could be off in this. If the address that's printing out on that label isn't correct or isn't a valid address, it might fail. FedEx might not see it as a valid address. We're going through and we are cleansing all the addresses as we speak. So there is a lot of effort going into that front. If you know that you're going to have a scenario here with your supplier address, feel free to reach out to your buyer. The buyer can go to this link here. I'm giving you, the suppliers, the link for the buyers to help pass along that information, but that is where they can go to change the address. It will be a process that needs to be gone through, but we can get the addresses corrected here. If for whatever reason you're through normal process, you're creating ASNs and something happens and you have a label that pops out with the incorrect address, or you need help, reach out to us, SupplyLineRouting@ge.com. Let us know what is going on, what the address shows and what it needs to show, and we can go ahead and we can correct that. We can get you a new shipping label with the correct addresses. We can help on that front. Same sort of thing, that second address where we're shipping to. If the destination address does not match where the material needs to go, it should all be dot code addresses. But if there's some other scenario going on, something's up, or if you're shipping it to a dot code that, like 1X, that is our drop shipment dot code, there is no address that exists systemically on our side for those. You will need to, again, reach out to SupplyLineRouting@ge.com. Give us all the shipment details. Let us know what needs to happen, what's wrong. We'll get that one set up and we'll route those for you. So that's address variations. Process is very systemic, so if anything is wrong with the addresses, you got to let us know. Few takeaways from this process. Been asked to note this, that packing lists are not generated in SupplyLine. If you require a packing list, you'll need to produce it from your ERP or from your system, but GE Aviation does not require packing list. I know that there's reference to packing list in the standard remarks. The reference to the packing list in the context of the standard remarks is if you're not in ACES. In here very soon, it will say if you're not in SupplyLine, right? All the paperwork that you get from SupplyLine suffices everything that GE Aviation needs. But however, SupplyLine will provide you with a shipping label. You will not have to go to those carrier portals like FedEx.com. You will not have to input the tracking information. You won't have to go back like you do today in ACES and input the tracking details. You won't have to do any of this as long as you use that second or third option. If you're using the first option where the supplier is paying, then you do have to do that. The one thing that does remain the same as the process today, though, you do still have to schedule your pickups with your carriers. No different, same process. You have to reach out. So a couple examples. If you're a domestic supplier and you ship domestically, If today you use FedEx Ground, in the future, once this process goes live, if you don't already have a FedEx Ground pickup scheduled for your facility, you would have to call into FedEx Ground and ask for a pickup. If you always ship with FedEx Ground, and calling FedEx Ground every single day to schedule a pickup isn't conducive to good business, we understand that. Reach out to us. We'll help you to get a scheduled pickup if you're unable to. If you have a FedEx rep and they're not able to help out, we can lean on FedEx to see if we can get that done for you. Same goes with any LTL carriers, FedEx Freight, YRC, USF Holland, XPO, the prior Conway business, any of those carriers. Let us know. We can help to get you a standing pickup, so that way you're not having to call every single day. So I did break it down what carriers you would expect to see on the domestic side. It's FedEx Ground, or it's one of the 5 LTL carriers. I named off most of them. It's going to be the XPO dedicated network. Previously that was the Ryder network. If we've provided you with a PTA, we're actually going to be scheduling that pickup as well, as long as it's not FedEx Express. If it is FedEx Express, you do have to schedule that pickup. But if it's one of the ground expedite carriers here in the US, like Custom Critical, Bolt, Panther, etc., that truck's already going to be heading your way, so you wouldn't have to schedule a pickup, but that is one of the carriers that you'd see. On the international front, it's either going to be FedEx Express or DHL Global Forwarding. The couple of you that use DHL Global Forwarding, you've got a pickup scheduled. You know what that process is. FedEx Express, same thing. You've already got a pickup schedule. More than likely, it's going to continue to operate the same way it is today. And just to recap, if you have any issues or questions, these are the different distribution lists that we have set up. I've given you some framework for when to use what. Supply line transportation questions. This is really the traffic team, the GE folks that you're probably familiar working with. We're there to help you if something is broken, you need help with the process, or you need help trying to get a pickup scheduled. Supply line routing at ge.com. This is the Team Allen team, if you've ever worked with them. So it's Allen International. They're more on the transactional. So if an address is mismatched, if no carrier routing is found, if you need help with the PTA process, they're really good at that process. They can help you there. Any problems with carriers, if you get labels that won't work for your scenario, or if anything in your shipment is outside the normal, okay? If you're shipping dangerous goods, if the material that you ship is over-dimensional, so if that doesn't make sense to you, then you're not shipping over-dimensional. The people that are shipping over-dimensional, you know what I'm talking about. It's too wide to go down the road. It has permits, etc. If something's overweight, if you're shipping 20,000 pounds of material, reach out to us. If you're shipping something that is either with dry ice or is temperature sensitive, it has to be kept cold, etc. Anything with the shipment, if anything is outside the norm, reach out to us. Let us know in advance. Supply line routing at ge.com. They'll get you squared away.